What's up, everybody? In day three, yes, it's only day three of the Sarah Boone trial, but we have the cross of the lead detective. The state rests their case. We get arguments of JOA from the defense, and Sarah Boone takes the stand as the first and most important witness in her own defense. I have so many thoughts on direct and cross. I can't wait to hear what you guys think and to answer your questions. That's all we need to say in the intro, because let's get into it. So I will say I had more that I wanted to play for the cross-examination of Detective Koepsell that we are not going to play all of. I am going to summarize it here for you. I didn't think it was the most effective cross in the world of the detective, who had some snark and potentially did some things that people may find annoying as jurors, that somebody may have been railroaded or tricked or whatever it may be. We're going to listen to a little bit of some of the questioning that he had for her, but generally speaking, he focused on the fact that her report was very detailed. She seems like a very detailed person, but she left out the detail of getting Sarah to the actual interrogation. And we knew that the focus was at least partially going to be on the fact that she did not read complete Miranda warnings. I felt like he could have hammered it a little bit harder about how we have these procedures in these cars for reasons, and she just went rogue and didn't read it. The question that he actually asked her was one that I didn't really think was even anywhere near the line that's what's necessary. And we talked about how even though the the state won this battle of it's still going to come in and we're not going to cut it all out because of Miranda, the defense was still able to put it before the jury and try to make the jury side-eye the confession, if you want to call it that, the unintentional confession of Sarah Boone, and the statements she made in the interrogation. Obviously not confessing to anything second degree or higher, but it didn't come off like that slimy. It didn't come off like they trampled on any of her rights from my perspective. And he asked so many open-ended questions on this cross that I feel like he let the detective say, well, yes, to a certain extent, we're allowed to trick or tell things that aren't true, but I don't think that happened in this case. I don't think I said anything that wasn't true in this case. And the one part she really pushed back on was that there was no conversation that Sarah Boone goes into detail with. And then he asks her a certain question that I may be reading into too much, and I put it on Twitter, and some of you guys agreed with me, some of you didn't, so I'll give you a chance to do it here as well. But let's just listen to this quick exchange between the detective and the defense attorney.
Okay. Do you remember in having the conversation with Ms. Boone about this meeting that was supposed to take place, that you said that you could not return the phone to her that day because you were not feeling very good? You remember telling her that?
That never happened.
Okay.
Very clearly, she says that never happened.
Ma'am. Jeff, if I could have a moment. Yes, of course. Ma'am, during this time frame, were you pregnant at that time?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
And then he just kind of moves on. And I was like, was he saying like pregnancy brain? She didn't remember, so we're going to believe Sarah Boone because obviously pregnant people can't remember things. I was like, is that what he's trying to go with there? People want a poll. Okay, Kelsey, go ahead and put up the poll. When he asked that question about the pregnancy, was he getting at pregnancy brain as one of the options, or Sarah's story makes sense? It's not a perfect poll. I wasn't going to do a poll, but it's okay. When he asked the question about the pregnancy, was he going for pregnancy brain or was he going for Sarah's story makes sense? Because once we heard Sarah testify, I did kind of start to understand the fact that he was going more along the lines of Sarah said she wasn't feeling well because she was pregnant. And a lot of people were mentioning that on Twitter. So he had to get that fact into evidence. And that's the way they could get it in later and have some corroboration. And I think that could be just as true as pregnancy brain type of thing. I want to play just a couple minutes right here at the end of it, just to get into, to see if I clipped the question that he asked about Miranda that she didn't ask, that to me was not the perfect way to do this. And then we'll get to Sarah Boone.
To be arrested.
We plan to meet at 3 p.m. and go over the autopsy and have another interview. So, I mean, I'm not sure why I would tell her that she's going to be arrested. That would potentially cause her to flee, not come. And then we have to go find her.
And like that was another thing. It's like, you give her a chance to explain. Why don't you just say, you didn't tell her she was going to be arrested. You got her to come down there. You wanted her to confess. You guys were dominating. You guys were controlling. You guys got her there. She talked to you without a lawyer. Cross-examination, keep them locked in. Don't give them the opportunity to say, well, yeah, we don't tell them they're getting arrested because we don't want them to flee. We don't want them to do something else to hurt somebody else that may have been a witness to their crime. That's why we don't tell them. And of course we want them to confess. Confessions are good for society. Get the criminals off the street. Don't give them opportunities to explain themselves on cross. Poll is rough, Kelsey said. All right, here, just one last time, I'll try to get the verbiage. Why did he ask the pregnancy question? Two poll options is to prove she had pregnancy brain or to corroborate Sarah's story. Do the best you can. It's not that big of a deal. People can vote and we'll talk about it.
Make it more difficult for everyone.
Or potentially get an attorney to come with her.
She was read her rights that said that she has a right to an attorney. And if one cannot be provided for her, she will be appointed one.
I understand that. You read her those rights when she got there. Is that correct?
Yes, I did.
You didn't read those rights to her before she got there, though, did she?
I wasn't in contact with her, like physical contact with her.
Okay.
And again, I don't like that question because you don't have to read her those rights over the phone when asking her to come to the police station. That's not how it's set up. I don't even think jurors think that. But you can dig into, I think James Owens made a good jury argument to the judge. It wasn't a good judge argument because it was never going to win, legally speaking, but I thought it was a good jury argument. It's like, here are these police procedures. Here is this Miranda card. You had an old card. Why didn't you get the new card? You didn't read the last question. It's there for a reason, right? Those are the types of questions I thought would have been better.
So what you said potentially for fleeing. My question was, potentially she could have got an attorney too to come with her. Is that not correct?
I misunderstood your question. I didn't hear potentially bring an attorney with her, but yes, I guess she potentially brought an attorney with her.
Potentially could have brought an attorney with her. She potentially could have stopped the interview and gotten an attorney. They read the Miranda questions. He's not picking out, in my opinion, where she really screwed up to where I think a jury would be like, wow, that sounds like a screw up. Legally speaking, we talked about it. They technically checked the boxes, the 4 boxes you needed for Miranda. But I think there was some information here that the jury might have been like, I don't know.
So Ms. Boone shows up and you tell her that some things that we need to talk about. Is that correct?
Specific verbiage. I know I said something along the lines of, obviously the autopsy had been conducted, and there were things that we needed to talk about in regards to that.
And prior to discussing it with her and asking her questions, you did read her Miranda warnings. Is that correct?
Prior to, I'm sorry, one more time.
Before you started asking her questions, though, in this interview, before you started asking Ms. Boone's questions, you read her Miranda warnings. Is that correct?
Yes. Before I started asking any sort of potentially incriminating questions, she was read her Miranda warnings. Yes.
Okay. Ma'am, do you remember, as part of the Miranda warnings that you read to Ms. Boone, did you read her the one that states that if you decide to answer questions but want to stop answering and consult with an attorney, you may do so? Do you independently remember reading Ms. Boone that instruction?
I don't recall that specific.
I think that was a little bit clunky. That wasn't what I remember being on the bottom of the Miranda card that she didn't read. Maybe it was. Maybe they actually got the Orange County Miranda card that was different than what they put in their motion. But I just don't feel like the delivery was as strong as it could have been with this line of questioning.
Specific, but I do have my Miranda card on me, but I don't recall that that's what that says. But it is on audio and video recording.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, ma'am.
All right, so we're done with this officer. And then, shockingly, the state rests. And Brad said this trial is flying. Curious to see what the week brings. So here's what I'll say, Brad. It is flying. I thought we were going to get back to a slowed down pace of a normal trial today because there were these delays that people were talking about. Why is the defense delaying? I posted on Twitter if you want my thoughts on that. Being a defense attorney is a lot harder in a trial than being a prosecutor because you have a client. and it's very difficult to deal with clients. Sometimes prosecutors forget that. I prosecuted cases before I ever defended cases, and I know having to clear every single thing you do and explain single thing you do to a client is very different than how a prosecutor prosecutes a case. And especially when you have testimony, when you have plea offers, when you have an incarcerated defendant, just everything's harder, everything takes longer. So I get that they were, complaining about the delays, but that's normal. We see a lot of trials where there's a lot of delays. And that happens. And I thought we were kind of going to get behind today, which would have brought us more on track for a normal trial, especially knowing Sarah Boone was going to testify. And that was probably going to be very long. And then they were going to be able to cross-examine her. So I thought, oh, wow, this is going to last a couple days. But then it got back on track with how quick the direct and cross-examination went of Sarah Boone. And I'm hoping the state is not rushing this case. And we'll talk about that more when we get to when the defense puts on Sarah Boone and we start talking about rebuttal and things like that. But it is definitely going quickly. Christy said the police told her they wouldn't arrest her with Lucas around. So of course she had to eventually go to them. I mean, they can say that, but if they feel like she's going to flee, they'll arrest her in front of Lucas. Like, the cops are going to arrest people they think commit heinous crimes like this. They're not always going to do what the defendant requests or asks for or wants. The poll results are 53% pregnancy brain, 47% Sarah's story makes sense. My initial gut reaction was, is he really trying to imply that she's wrong and Sarah's right because she had pregnancy brain? That was what was on my mind. Somebody's asking what pregnancy brain is. I guess it's that pregnant women are forgetful. I'm not saying that. And I was thinking that's pretty rough if that's what he's going to say, especially because we know there are women on the jury. I don't know if they have kids. But the more I listened and when I heard Sarah testify, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think it was that he was going to say she was pregnant at the time. It corroborates the fact that Sarah said she used her pregnancy to lure Sarah to the police station. And I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that's kind of where I think it ended up landing. All right, let's get to Sarah's testimony. Actually, JOA argument, they focus on second degree. Defense rarely ever wins, but it is what it is. They went through the colloquy, making sure Sarah Boone knew what she was doing, when she was going to testify. They keep asking her, are you satisfied with this defense? Are you satisfied with this defense team? She keeps saying yes. Everybody's asking me why. Number one, it's a judge to judge things. Some judges do that all the time. Number two, each individual defendant is different. And maybe this judge is doing it even more than he normally does because of Sarah Boone. We all know what's happened in the past. And in my opinion, that adds to the CYA that's on this case and trying to prevent this thing from going up on appeal and being successful. Can the prosecution recall Sarah? So no, they had their opportunity to cross-examine her and they asked her all the questions that she could there. I don't know if in their rebuttal case, if they would need to recall her since she has waived her Fifth Amendment right, but she's answered all of her questions. I think she could assert it at this time. I don't know. That's a good question. I'd have to research that. I've never seen it happen where they recall a defendant. So I don't know for sure. I would think the answer is no, but I'd have to look into this more. Very disappointed in Cross today. Hoping for a better rebuttal. We'll get there eventually. I've been following this case with you, but I have to say Sarah impressed me with her testimony today. I'm glad I'm not on this jury. So let's get to that testimony of Sarah Boone. Actually, sorry, before we do again, one more thing. I thought James Owens made a really good argument when he said, Judge, I want to be able to ask her the questions about the prior bad acts because it's already in evidence. And I think that's actually a really good argument. It came out multiple times. The state elicited it on the video that they decided to put in with her interrogation. They elicited it with George's brother about how you choke me, and the prior instances of violence and what you're going to find on my phone. That's already come out. So I think they would be able to, in their defense case, put on that evidence. The judge disagreed with me. The judge said no. And now I know why, because I know the breadth and the description and the pictures of the prior acts of violence were a lot. So I understand why the judge didn't quite let him get into that. But I think under normal circumstances, even without a battered spouse defense, the state let those facts out and the defense is allowed to rebut and clarify and discuss those facts in their case in chief. So I thought that was a really good argument that the state had already elicited prior acts of violence in their case in chief. Okay. So she testifies. It's not a narrative, which again, is kind of, I was surprised to hear. And people were saying that that stemmed from when the prosecutor said it. The prosecutor was like, I don't know, Judge, she might have testified narrative. That was far from like a report from the courtroom. I was starting to hear that people were reporting from the courtroom that Owen said she's going to testify by narrative because they're afraid he's going to elicit lies and fraud on the court. And I was like, that's surprising since he already asked her questions in an interview. And I said this in prior videos, but not a narrative testimony. He was asking questions, and he was not just asking questions, folks. He was leading her down the line. He was asking leading questions. The state objected early and then stopped. He led her and was giving her answers at certain points, which again, if the state's not going to object and the judge is not going to sustain those objections, he just rode with it. And criminal defense attorneys, they will often do things like that. They get into background. One of the important facts was they shared custody of Lucas, which I think is good because, you know, if she's an alcoholic, horrible, abusive person, then you would think she wouldn't have shared custody of her son. So I thought that was a good fact that they got out by the defense, that they have shared custody. Met George after her and Brian broke up, even if they weren't maybe officially divorced. They hit it off quick. He was handsome, smart, funny. Didn't think he would be into her. She would show up disheveled all the time. I thought it was kind of funny when Owen said something like, and this gives you a little window into what this relationship is like and what it's like to be Sarah Boone's lawyer. But people are saying my brain was great when I was pregnant. That's great. That's good. Yeah. I get it. I would never say otherwise. But Owens was like, he was your on again, off again boyfriend for 3.5 years or something. And she was like, no, I would not say that. We were very serious. He asked me to marry him. I even said yes once. And Owens is like, okay. Let's relax a second. You dated. There were some times he moved in with his parents, right? Yes. There were some times where you either broke up or almost broke up, right? And she's like, yes. He's like, so you guys were on again, off again, right? And she's like, yes. I thought that was kind of funny. So she's discussing falling in love with George. Okay. And you guys know I'm not what is it? What do they call those? The people that, you know, watch you and tell whether you're lying or telling the truth. I'm not an expert. Like I'm not a body language doctor or body language expert at all. But there was something throughout her entire testimony that even I, somebody who's not the most emotional person in the world, who is not the most sensitive person in the world, it could not have been more obvious to me that she showed absolutely no emotion at multiple points throughout this testimony. And one of the points where I expected it, okay? Now she's on trial for her life. She's saying she didn't do what they said she's doing in the way that they said she's doing it. I get that. But what about when you're talking about falling in love with this guy who you said you have more of a connection with than you had with your husband, the father of your child, that you were with forever? When you tell the story of falling in love with George and how you didn't know that, like how he even, you know, paid attention to you, but he made you feel so good about yourself. No emotion. Somebody's asking if she's medicated. I'm not sure. But that's tough. If she was medicated, they should have brought that up as the defense. And sometimes it hurts her lack of emotion. And maybe the mental health experts will testify to that. It's a good question. And if she is, I hope the mental health experts explain that now she doesn't have the highs and lows that she used to have because she's on some medication. That would be good. That would be good context. But I was shocked when she showed no emotion discussing how they fell in love. He's gone, right? At her hand, even if it was a mistake, even if he deserved it, whatever, from her perspective. Still, I would have expected some emotion there. We got none. Tell us what happened that day. Objection calls for a narrative. So they were not going to let her testify in a narrative. I just thought that was kind of interesting. They went to Publix. They got the wine. They drink. They don't have a lot of money. They consume more alcohol. You know, she agrees they were intoxicated, et cetera, et cetera. And again, I even made a note to myself, a lot of leading, which means you're not really afraid of eliciting fraud on the court. What happened if she says, no, she's not? I don't know what this means. If you mean by testifying, if she, I don't think the state can call her. If they can and she says no, the judge can hold her in contempt, can, tell her she has to, can tell the jury to, he even gave her that warning. Like if you refuse to answer on cross-examination, I'll tell the jury to strike everything they heard you testify to. Joanne said, you read my mind, Peter, had the answer to the question before I even asked my question. Is the judge trying to avoid appellate issues by asking if she's happy with her lawyers? Yes, Joanne, same wavelength. JPC said, we were disappointed in the state's cross and the cross of Sarah. What makes us think we won't be disappointed in their rebuttal? I'm not feeling good about a conviction. So hold your horses, JPC. We're going to talk a lot about that. We're 20 minutes in already. I feel like we've just begun. So everybody just buckle up. Okay. Buckle up, because we're about to get into Sarah Boone and her explanation of what happened that day. And we're going to listen to it together here.
Maybe a week or so prior.
Okay. And so what, y'all were going to donate that to Goodwill, or?
Yes, we were going to do, I guess, a spring cleaning. Anyone who has children understands that they grow quickly, and there was a lot of clothes that I needed to go through of my sons, and then also from George and I moving in and just kind of putting everything in there, at one point where we just needed to actually go through it and organize it and get things more in order.
So is that the reason it was downstairs? You were going to donate it and a bunch of things that you're going to put inside?
Correct, yes.
Okay. So it'd been down there a week, so it was already down there?
Yes, George brought it down.
Okay. So you said that you got down there, you're looking for him, you see him settling into the suitcase.
Yes.
What did you do?
In my head, I said, oh man, we're obviously not going to be going to sleep anytime soon. And I walked over and he was trying to get himself flat, so I couldn't tell that he was in there. And then
Now, let me stop you there. The suitcase, is it the suitcase over here in the
yes,
box? You've seen it, you saw it.
yes,
It's a pretty big suitcase.
yes.
How big is it?
Come on, dude. It's a pretty big suitcase. Now, I get it. George was a smaller guy, 5'2", 100 pounds. That's a smaller guy. But come on, it was a big suitcase. So he's trying to make it seem like he had all the room in the world in there. Not an argument I would have gone with. Not an argument I would have gone with.
George was my height. And
How tall are you?
I'm 5'3".
Okay. And how much did George weigh?
I thought it was 100 pounds.
Okay. And how much did you weigh?
I was 98 pounds.
All right. Do you agree you put on some weight?
Since I've been incarcerated, yes.
I'm not sure she liked that question. You put on some weight, he said. But I paused it there because she said, since I've been incarcerated, yes. And maybe people didn't pick up on this. Maybe the jury didn't pick up on this. But I was like, man, didn't we do all this so that the jury would not think you were intoxicated? I'm sorry, not intoxicated, incarcerated. You tried to first make them think you weren't intoxicated too. But I thought, we have the street clothes, no shock collar, nothing on you because we wanted the jury to see you were not incarcerated. And then she just said it there. She just let it slip there that, yes, she's gained a lot of weight because she's been incarcerated. I thought that was interesting. And I wonder if the jury picked up on that. And I wonder if they care, right? I wonder if they care. Sometimes jurors just expect these people are incarcerated until trial. But I thought it was interesting that she's the one that let it slip.
Well, at the time, though, y'all were pretty skinny.
Yes,
So from the pictures, it looks like y'all were both pretty thin.
yes,
All right. So because of his thinness, is that how? And he's a small man.
yes,
Okay. So he was able to get in the suitcase on his own.
yes.
Did he willingly get in the suitcase?
He was already in there.
Okay. When you got to him, did he see you?
Yes.
All right. Tell us what happened.
I mean, I zipped him up. We thought it was funny. And we're joking about how he was, I guess, small enough to fit inside of the suitcase.
So again, she admits she zipped him up. These are important facts that the state's going to highlight.
All right. So what happened then?
From there, it was just, we were laughing about it. And it was just strange that he was small enough to fit in there. And then I kind of moved it around a little bit with him in the suitcase still. It was still funny that he was still in the suitcase. Just, I think he and I were just kind of, couldn't believe that he could fit in the suitcase.
Did you eventually close the top?
Yes, the top was already closed. As he was settling himself in there, that's how I knew he was in there, was because the top was kind of flapping a little bit.
So he had gotten in there to hide, and he pulled the top.
Yes.
On top of it, but you could tell he was in there.
Yes,
You saw him right away.
yes,
All right. So at some point, did you zip him up?
yes.
And what was he saying or doing when you were zipping him up?
We were just thought it was funny.
Were you both laughing?
Yes.
And so you zipped him up. Were y'all still laughing once you zipped him up?
Yes.
Tell the jury what happened then.
From there, I moved the suitcase around a couple of times, just kind of on the wheels and moved it around. And at that point, it was funny. We were joking and laughing about it.
All right, now, eventually, did you go sit down?
So no overt act prior to him being zipped in the suitcase, which I find is interesting. So the only overt act where she was put in fear for her life was while the man was already zipped up in the suitcase. Now, I posted this on Twitter as well. I would have been shocked if the judge would have already or would have not allowed them to go forward with battered spouse syndrome. It's just way too big of an appellate issue, and a scintilla of evidence is all you need. And this, I put in there, I joked on Twitter that this case might be, the picture of this case as the legal definition of a scintilla of evidence of an overt act. But nonetheless, interesting facts. Mo asked, sorry, but why is he leading? So again, I think he's leading because he can. The state objected once. The judge overruled it, but I'll be pretty clear. I think the judge overruled it early on because it was just background. He was like, you got married here. You lived in this city. We went here. We went here. You're allowed to lead there just to get through the background. Not supposed to be leading here and giving her important facts in your questions, but if the state doesn't object. And by the way, defense attorneys come by it honestly because we do so much more cross-examination than direct because most cases are the vast majority of the witness are state witnesses. So we're crossing more of them. We don't direct as criminal defense attorneys as many. And when we're prosecutors, it's the opposite. We're directing a lot more. We're not crossing as many as civil plaintiff's lawyer, which is 99% of what I do now. Again, much more used to direct, but I love cross from doing so many criminal defense cases and crossing defendants in civil cases. But the state's not objecting. And so he's asking leading questions.
On the couch, you need your phone.
Yes. The suitcase had, for me moving it around, was flopped over. So while it was like that, I thought at that point I had a moment to.
So it got flipped over just because she was moving it around. You see how she's like kind of explaining things away? And I'm going to start talking about cross now because when she says stuff like that, don't let her get away with that, right? If you have better evidence, don't let her get away with, we were just messing around and I was moving around. Then it had flopped over. It's like, you flipped it over to where now he's upside down from how he got in. Even when you flip it back, you can realize people are disoriented now. He's been drinking. You've been beating on him. You've been shaking him around and, change the verbiage to what you believe it is as the state. But when she's explaining it like this, it's like, oh, no big deal. No big deal. It's just, we're just messing around. Everybody's laughing.
I guess take the time to talk to him while I guess he was not able to get out for a moment.
So you flipped it. You got it on the top, right?
Yeah.
It's in, but at some point you flip it over so the zipper is on the bottom.
Well, it was just kind of how I was moving it around and it ended up kind of flopping. So
it was upside down.
Yes.
So after you did that, what did you do?
That's when I went over and decided to videotape to just see the gist in it for him to understand that right now I feel safe and right now I have the ability to actually speak to you.
Does she understand the definition of jest, right? Let me look it up. The definition of jest is a thing said or done for amusement, a joke. It was said in jest. Speak or act in a joking manner. So she says, I got my phone just to do this in jest because I wanted him to know I was safe. I felt safe to talk to him. That doesn't jive. I think that she is struggling, which is not a surprise, but she's really struggling to explain all of this away and explain these videos away. And I don't think she did a very good job. Now, her stoicism is an advantage. I think it's honest and it doesn't feel like an act of sympathy. So I agree. I think she did not get flustered. She was calm. She was cool. She did not seem like she was acting or overdoing anything. Even when we start to talk about the past abuse, it doesn't feel like she was overdoing much. I did feel like she was really calm and kind of steady the whole time. I expected to see some emotion that would be drawn out of most people during certain parts. But like right now, I think she's searching for an explanation of exactly how to explain those two videos we all watched. You can say the 11 minutes in the middle or 9 minutes, whatever it is the most important part of this trial. And fine, we're going to get to those minutes, but you've still got to explain the 2.5 and, however many seconds the second video was, still got to explain that away. And this is her trying to do it. And I'll back it up now where you can hear her say, first it's in jest, and then very important that he would know that she feels safe to talk right now when he's zipped up.
Just see the, I guess the jest in it for him to understand that right now I feel safe and right now I have the ability to actually speak to you in a manner that normally I would not have the ability to do.
And you were intoxicated.
Yes.
And you would agree that you said some things you should not.
Yes.
But you realized he could not get out and get at you.
And that's it. That's the explanation. It was the gist of the situation. I could feel safe because he was zipped up. And Owens is like, and you said some things you shouldn't have, right? Yeah. Okay, let's move on. So if I was the state, I would have hammered away at those things that she said and be like, why did you say them? Why did you say that? You said it because you wanted him to suffer. You said it because you wanted to get rid of him, right?
Is that fair?
At that moment, yes.
So it goes on for about 10 minutes.
Yes.
You heard it here today, did you not?
Yes.
You heard his voice as he was speaking from the suitcase.
Yes.
That was his voice on video and audio.
Yes.
And you heard your voice on the video and audio.
Yes.
That was your voice.
Yes.
All those things said by the man were said by George in that 2-minute video.
Correct.
All the words said by the female were said by you in that 2-minute video.
Correct.
Were you intending on showing him the video the next day?
Yes.
At the time or the next day, it's fair to say you don't even remember a video thing.
I do not.
So
a lot of you guys picked up on this on Twitter. She doesn't remember the video, which again, she said that many times. Now, I didn't know if that was a truth or a lie, right? Because just because she said it before doesn't mean she's going to continue to say it's true now, which is fine. That's her prerogative. But she doesn't remember taking the videos. But she remembers vividly the 9 minutes in between. And I think the state did mention that on cross, but they didn't hammer it. They really didn't hammer it on cross, and I don't know why. It's like, and I'll save some of what I, just off the top of my head, what I would have done kind of in cross. And again, I don't want to hammer him too much. I could tell Mr. J has so much going on and he's frustrated at the late disclosures. They're deposing witnesses at night, at lunch. I feel like it's miserably difficult. And I think he's done some things really well throughout the trial. This was not my favorite part when we get to cross. So just take it with a grain of salt. And I'm Monday morning quarterbacking, and he knows the case much more than I do. And he's got a lot more experience than I do prosecuting cases. So just remember all that when we get to it. But these are the types of things that frustrated me on direct. And I was like, I don't think that she's doing very well on direct. But then after cross, I'll kind of let you know how I felt with the totality of her testimony.
from what you can tell from watching it, did that refresh your memory about that event?
It did.
Why did you say all that? What you were feeling, what your feelings were at the time, and then explain that to the jury. You mentioned, you talked about it before. You said he was in that confined space and it was my chance. But do you want to elaborate on that? Or?
Sure. I want you all to know that the majority of the time, I'm always afraid and always scared.
All right, well, I understand that. Okay, I understand that. But would it be fair to say that you had some anger at that point?
I did.
Would it be fair to say that you wanted to tell him off to some degree?
I just wanted, yes, for him to have a better understanding, which was the whole point of the videos and documentation prior.
And you could tell that he was uncomfortable.
I'm guessing.
And did you want him to feel some uncomfort?
I did.
Okay.
So that's a horrible question, in my opinion. You knew he was uncomfortable, yes, and you wanted him to feel some uncomfort. Yes, I did. And this is before the overt act. This is before he said anything nasty to her. So because of the past, she wanted to punish him physically, keeping him in that bag. And I thought if there was going to be a question that the state was going to win the whole overt act argument on, it would have been that. That was a bad question, in my opinion. People are asking if there's closed caption. I wish there was. There's not on this video yet, but you can turn them on for mine. I'm pretty sure you can turn it on while I'm talking. So it'll be on your individual video with closed caption.
Now, at some point, you turned off the video.
Yes.
And then we saw a second video, which was approximately 11 minutes later. And you've seen that video. It was played to the jury. It was 22 seconds long.
Yes.
And I don't think you speak in that video. You hear Jorge say Sarah one time.
Yes.
Is that fair to say?
Yes.
So between the 2-minute video and the 22-second video is an 11-minute period. Would you tell the jury what happened?
We continued to, I guess, speak to one another, and his tone changed, and I knew the tone, and we ended up, I guess, arguing back and forth with one another, and it was the things that he was saying very much frightened me, and cursing at me and threatening me, and
Did he want you to let him out of the suitcase?
I'm sure so.
Okay, go ahead, tell.
Did he want you to let him out of the suitcase? I'm sure so. Yeah, I agree.
Tell the jury.
And it got very heated very quickly, and he continued to push on the suitcase. And my fear was that he was going to break out of the suitcase, knowing that it was a broken suitcase. And his hand started to come through. His hand started to come through this way. And so I shook the suitcase. Trying to get his hand to go back in, shaking it, and telling him that, please stop doing this. Please stop doing this to me. Please stop doing this to me.
So his hand actually got out of the suitcase.
Yes.
And you went to the suitcase
Yes.
and shook it.
Yes.
Did that force his hand to go back in?
No.
So you're shaking it. Were you shaking it to try to get the suitcase, his hand back in?
Yes.
How long did you shake it?
I don't know.
But his hand was still out.
Yes.
Was he trying to get out?
Forcefully, yes.
Was he angry at you?
Yes.
He was forcefully trying to get out and he was angry at her. Now, again, this is before the passive use and violence comes in. So it's like, yeah, I would be mad too if somebody zipped me up in a suitcase and wouldn't let me out, even though I was begging and couldn't breathe. So I think there's probably some people on the jury thinking that. Things change a little when we get to the past violence, and we'll talk about that when we get there.
Were you in fear?
Always.
If he would have gotten out of the suitcase, what would he have done to you?
Like he used to tell me, he probably would have made me unrecognizable, or I would have lost my life.
Did you lose the grip on the suitcase?
Yes.
Did you lose the grip on the suitcase? That is a leading question. And that the answer is in the question. She lost the grip on the suitcase. So this is why she goes and gets the bat, by the way, spoiler alert. But this is Owens telling the story, leading the witness right where he wants her to go.
Where was the bat in relation to the suitcase?
It was leaning against the dining room table right there.
How far was the bat from the suitcase?
3 feet, 2 feet.
Was his hand still out of the suitcase?
Yes.
And was he getting out of the suitcase?
He very much was trying, yes.
And so what did you do?
For the split-second reaction that I had, I happened to see that, and I grabbed the baseball bat and was trying to poke his hand to go back in, to please don't break through, please. So I hit his hand.
Did you hit the outside part of his hand?
Yes.
We've seen the photographs of his left hand. Did you cause the bruising there?
I'm guessing yes.
Now, you've seen the bat. It's a youth bat.
Yes, I bought it for my son.
Is this the bat you used?
Yes.
And you said you poked him with it?
Yes, I kind of pushed, like I held it with the skinny part here, and then
So the grip here.
prodded at it, yes.
You grabbed it with both hands here,
Yes.
and then different.
Back inside.
You made those injuries.
I did.
We've seen the photographs.
Yes.
We see the bruising. Is that from that bat?
Yes.
Eventually, did his hand go back inside from you doing?
Yes. Finally, he had subsided and retracted his hand.
So in your mind, did you prevent him from attacking you?
Absolutely. Split-second decision.
Now, once he retracted his hand,
Split-second decision. That's what she did to stop him from attacking her. That, folks, is the scintilla of evidence of an overt act. His hand got out. She tried to get it back in, tried shaking, used the bat. She was in fear for her life at that point. That's basically the scintilla of evidence of the overt act. That's about as minor as it gets, but I do agree with the judge's ruling there.
do you remember zipping it up some? Or what did you do in relation? Because he was upside down, was he not, at that point?
Yes,
At some point, you flipped him back up.
I did.
Tell how that happened.
He wasn't cursing. He wasn't threatening. His hand was inside foremost. There was no more of him trying to break through the suitcase. So I felt safe enough to turn it back over. It wasn't
to break through the suitcase. But now she says she turned it back over, which kind of means she thinks the threat is gone, which, again, if I'm just using common sense and my logic, how is the threat gone? If he's angry, you just beat him with a bat, hard enough to leave bruises all over his body. And multiple people said, she said he could get out of the suitcase in the interrogations, but said he couldn't get out, so she felt safe. Exactly. Marie said by saying she felt safe talking to him in the suitcase, she acknowledged she knew he couldn't get out. Look at you guys putting your thinking caps on, and I'd be willing to bet the jurors are paying attention to these details as well, which again, I think showing and highlighting these inconsistencies, I would have just taken my time with her through cross. I don't care if it took 2 days. Jennifer asked, do you think the lack of objections to leading questions and the softness of cross suggest the prosecutor is feeling overly confident? So we're about to get to cross, and I'll just tell, actually, we're not about to get to cross. We're going to go through all the past instances of violence, but I didn't think it was soft. I don't think he was soft. He came out swinging. So it's not like he was trying to be gentle. Oh, Music Girl said, why, if Sarah said she's not happy with the defense, then he probably would say, go back and talk about it. He's not just going to nuke the trial and say, yeah, okay, this trial's over, mistrial, get a new defense attorney. He would have told him to go back and talk about it some more, the judge. Sarah Boone is very calculated, playing the system, and after 8 lawyers feeling confident, how much rope has she got, Peter? I mean, at this point, they're off and running. Like, she's going to work with these lawyers. I think she knows they give her the best chance to win. They're doing it pro bono, and they're doing their job. I give them kudos for that. They're definitely doing their job. Who was behind her? She kept smiling at. She couldn't zip the case. Both were abusive. Shouldn't have let out while both happy and having fun. Should have let out while both happy and having fun. I have no idea who was behind her, who she's smiling at. I have no idea. All right, we're almost done with kind of her explanation of what happened in those 9 minutes in between.
It wasn't happening anymore.
You went back to the video and the couch,
I did, yes.
and you saw the second video,
Yes.
the 22-second, and he's right side up again,
Yes.
and you hear him say, Sarah,
Yes.
had you left enough room for him to get out? Zipper to zipper.
Yes. That's how his hand was trying.
That suitcase has 2 zippers, doesn't it? And they meet at various places along the line.
Correct.
How much room, when you flip it over, how much room was between zipper to zipper?
I don't know specifically. I mean, it was enough to where his hand was coming out.
After you hit him with the bat, was he not trying to get out anymore?
No.
Did you believe that he could breathe in there?
Yes.
Did you ever believe he could die in there?
No. At all.
Were you trying to kill him?
Never.
Did you want to kill him?
I did not.
Did you walk upstairs?
I did, yes.
Why didn't you let him out before you walked upstairs? Were you afraid?
Terrified is more of the word.
Sorry, we're lagging a little bit here. So why didn't you let him walk up the stairs? That was the question. Why didn't you let him walk up the stairs? And she didn't answer immediately. And Owen says, were you terrified? That's giving her the answer. Or were you scared? And she said, the word I would use is terrified. Dr. Sue said, my opinion of her changed today. And I think that happened with a lot of people. Some people in the chat may be surprised how many comments I've gotten for people that have sympathy for Sarah Boone now, that feel horrible for her now. And we'll talk about that when we get to the past instance of violence.
As long as he was in the suitcase, he couldn't harm him.
Correct.
Please. Did you want him to calm down?
Yes, I wanted him to stop. being angry because I know what it is for him to be angry.
You went upstairs. Where were the dogs?
The dogs ran upstairs with me.
And where did they go?
On the bed.
Did you have the phone with you?
Yes,
I know at some point you called your husband, Brian, did you not?
I did.
Do you recall how long that conversation was?
Not very long.
Can you recall what was said?
I don't remember exactly. No, I don't.
He was threatening her, threatening you. Can you tell the jury what he was saying?
I don't know. Am I allowed to curse?
Yes.
That he was going to fucking end me. And that's what made me ask him please to stop doing what he's doing to me. That he was going to, I'm guessing, try his best that night to probably take my life.
But what the threat you heard was he's
going to
say the
fucking
word.
end me.
Excuse me?
Fucking end me.
End you?
Yes.
And that's when they stop and they have the overt act discussion. And then when the answer is yes to that, we get into the prior instance of violence. Before we get there, I'm going to run through some questions here. Boricua. Hi, Peter. What's your take on the details of all the prior bad acts that came in? The pics were pretty brutal. Do you think the DV might land with any jurors? So yes, I think it might land with some of the jurors. And my thoughts, I'm going to get pretty detailed here in a second because we're literally about to get into that. The Last Ronin, all the things that made her fear for her life happens when the camera isn't rolling. Very convenient. And that's I would have made this point so clear on cross. It's like, okay, so let's just say, so you did this X, Y, and Z, and we have the video of that, right? That looks pretty bad. You'd agree, right? That looks pretty bad. That looks like you want him in there. That looks like you want to punish him. That looks like you want to make him uncomfortable, which you've already admitted to, right? Now let's go to the second video. He's begging to get out and you still don't let him out, right? You agree with that. You make an intentional choice to leave him in the suitcase before you go upstairs, right? During that video. We have video evidence of that, right? Let's talk about the 9 minutes in between. That's where your defense comes from, right? The unrecorded 9 minutes in between. So nobody else gets to see that. What we see, you agree, looks pretty bad. I would have really focused on that. Could the prosecution put a mannequin size like George to illustrate his positioning in the suitcase? Unlikely for something like that to be allowable. Theoretically, if you had an expert that said this is the only way he could fit, but there's just too many too many differences that he could have been in there different ways. It's a little speculative. It's not really reliable evidence, so that usually wouldn't come in. I Am Groot said, could the state ask Sarah to get in the suitcase? No, that would also be inappropriate and objectionable. It's not relevant whether or not she can fit in the suitcase or how she would get in the suitcase or get out as to what happened that night to George. I understand why people would want to see something like that, but no, that would never happen in a real trial. Rin, I feel like that could have been more of a home run for the prosecution. You want him to be uncomfortable. You want him to suffer to hurt. That's why you left him in there to die. I agree. They were given so many nuggets here throughout this direct. Like, I did not think this direct was a home run, that first part. I did not think that was a good explanation for the facts. That did not make me think she didn't do anything wrong. That did not make me think she was in fear for her life. At this point in her direct, I was like, that is not good. The state is going to hammer her on cross. He's got to be salivating. He probably just can't wait to get up there. Could the prosecution be holding back for rebuttal? Sure. And this case is far from over. We have all the expert testimony. We've got more discussion about prior bad acts. And then the state gets to come back on rebuttal. And I'm going to talk at the end of the video about what I hope to see on rebuttal. I think he's being careful on cross. She's a DV victim too. Also, less cross means less for the defense to respond to, saving for closing. I don't know. I don't think he was going easy on her. I really don't think he was being that careful. Again, every lawyer is a little bit different. I would have taken a different route on cross because she's admitting to lying and she told so many lies. I would have tried to highlight every single one. I would have asked her, was it intentional or was it not intentional? What did you intend to do that night? I would have asked her those questions. So what was unintentional about that night? Tell me, explain to me the difference, because I don't think she's got a good explanation. I just don't. Let's not judge Sarah based on how we think she should act. Anyone who is incarcerated that long would have a hard time with the emotional regulation. Yeah, I have no idea. I'm just saying, you're saying don't judge her on how she should act. I'll tell you, based on jury research and other trials, they expect people to act a certain way emotionally. And if they don't, they do take that into account when judging their credibility. And that's kind of what we're discussing on this channel is what's going on at the trial, what the jurors could be thinking. I do think if somebody came and testified that she's been incarcerated for a long time or she's been medicated or whatever, if they want to get into that, that could help explain some of the emotional differences. Do jurors put much stock in demeanor shifts from defense prosecution in reverse? State was not having it with the prosecution, or she was not having it with the prosecution today. I don't think her demeanor was that bad with the prosecution. Yes. So to answer your question, yes, I do think the state or the jurors put a lot of stock into that. And a lot of jurors I've talked to afterwards have said exactly this. Does the deal the state offered make more sense now? It always made sense to me. I thought that was a fair deal. I thought it was fair for both sides, my opinion at the time, and that really hasn't changed. Okay, so here's a little clip I want to play about when we get back, after all the arguments, after the judge takes some time to make the decision, he asks Sarah Boone a very important question, and that question is, describe how you felt when you saw the suitcase in the morning. And when we have our clients on the stand and it's an emotional part and it's a difficult part, and we really want them to dig deep and take the jury there with you. And we're asking, I know it's hard, but you've got to be able to put it into words. That's what testimony is, right? This is your life on the line. Explain it. And we want them to explain it. And again, to call back to Menendez, sometimes they can explain it to us so well to where it grips our heart. And then at trial, sometimes it comes out like this. When you hear her explanation, it was just like, man, the lawyer probably wanted so much more than she gave him in this moment.
How did you feel when you saw the suitcase?
I turned around, I noticed the suitcase, and I remembered.
How did you feel when you saw the suitcase?
I don't think I've ever experienced anything like that before.
Describe it for the jury.
He asks her multiple ways, like, how did you feel? Well, describe it. Use your words. Describe it to the jury.
I guess it was, I was aghast, and I just can't describe the feeling. It was terror to a certain degree.
I'm sorry, say that again now.
It was terror to a certain degree. I just can't describe it in words, the feeling of remembering.
Well, then it has no impact on the jury. Like, and I'm not trying to be rude or crass, okay? You guys know that. But saying I can't explain it and I can't put it into words, well, then you're not taking the jury there with you. I realize it's hard. It's miserable. I realize she's a victim of domestic violence. I get that. You have to explain it to the jury. You have to explain what it was like. I started to sweat. I lost my breath. I didn't know what to do. I completely freaked. My brain just stopped. I did the first thing I thought. I called Brian. He's the one I asked what to do with everything in my life, basically. And I wasn't thinking 911. I wasn't thinking anything. I literally felt like I lost do something to bring them there with you. What did you feel? What was going on inside your body, outside your body? You got to give them what you were going through, right? You have to explain it, not just like, I can't put it into words. I realize that's how most of us talk in everyday life, but that's not what this is. That part of the trial is so important.
And then he was still in there.
So what did you do?
I immediately unzipped
That's what she talks about. And again, the lack of emotion, taking his body out and stretching him out and doing CPR and stuff. Again, I don't know, but just seemed strange to me. Did you love George? Yes. Still to this day. He was nice on the good days. We shared a soul, a connection I didn't even have with Brian. Not a ton of emotion there either. They both drank way too much. Then they start getting into the domestic violence. And here's what I'll say. Kind of my overarching theme and thought to the prior acts of domestic violence. Horrible what happened to Sarah Boone. It's hard to put into words, right? How I feel when I see people that are victims of domestic violence. I don't care who they are. I don't care how they responded to it. I don't care if they're also bad people. I don't care if they're liars. I don't care if they cheated. It's just, I hate to see it. And this seems like pretty great evidence that this did happen to her. Now, she says it all happened at the hands of George. Of course, if people want to pick at that, like we have to take her word for it. It could have been she fell. Somebody else could have done it to her. Fine. But these pictures and descriptions of events that she went through is horrible. And based on Brian Boone's testimony, the police reports, the pictures, the timing, it seems like there's a lot to corroborate that this happened to Sarah Boone, and I feel horrible for her. I would not have blamed her from running as far away from George as possible if he exactly did this to her. So people are asking, wasn't he a victim too? I'm not saying he's not. Let's not get things convoluted or conflated here, okay? I'm not saying that. I'm just specifically talking about Sarah Boone is a victim of domestic violence. I feel very confident saying that after today. If you disagree, that's fine. We're all, watching and listening to the same trial. And I'm not saying she didn't do anything back to him. And this is one of the things I hope comes out in rebuttal. If she was also the aggressor and abusive to him, they need to explain that in detail in rebuttal. If they have pictures or medical records of his injuries at the hands of Sarah Boone, those need to come in. They need to take their time and put forth all the evidence they have in rebuttal. They need to not rush rebuttal, my opinion. Yeah, people are saying both can be true. Absolutely. So some of the stories, him grabbing her and throwing her around, and she has injuries like this to her arm. That's real bruising, right? That's not just from a flick. She tells stories about him waving a butcher knife around and her cutting her finger, and another time he slapped soup out of her hand and she had second-degree burns. And then I thought potentially the most gruesome one, and again, we don't need to listen to all of these stories, but just one or two so that you can understand how much really was going on and what happened to her and how bad this was. Now, from my perspective, this is all horrible. This is all reason she needs help, and maybe crimes were committed going both ways. But these prior acts of violence, again, as we can remember from Ashley Benefield's case, that's not enough to end somebody's life on a completely different day. You can think about Menendez, past abuse. It's horrible. It's deplorable. Those people should be punished for it. But you can't walk in and end their life. That's why that alone is not enough for her to lock him in a suitcase until he passes. So this is all horrible, but it doesn't prove the self-defense on that day. And part of what the experts are going to do is try to connect these past acts of violence with her actions that day. And from my perspective, as horrible as this all is, and I feel horribly for her, it does not justify doing that to him that day unless he did something to you to reasonably put you in fear for your life. And sticking his hand out of the suitcase, just from my perspective at this point, does not feel like enough. We'll see what her experts say. We'll see if they can get the ball across the line, but that's how we're trying to judge the evidence as we go through. So let's listen to this. So yeah, Ashley Benefield's case, she said there were plenty of past acts of violence. Not to this level. She didn't have pictures and medical records and things like this, but her testimony said there was. All right, so let's listen to the story again. Give us an idea of the past acts of violence, because it's fair. We're presenting how this case is being presented to the jury.
It would be nice to cook a nice steak dinner. We don't have two nickels rubbed together, so I thought it would be special to make a steak dinner and make potato and go above the normal whatever's left over in the refrigerator. And so I spent a lot of time doing that. And George is drinking the entire time and on the back porch.
So real quick to JCS Monroe, I don't know if they're doing the lesser included. If they're doing the lesser included, it's still possible that they could come down with manslaughter. I think they should do that, my opinion. They don't have to. You can say, no, we're just going to go for murder too. I would be surprised if the jury hung in this case. I would be surprised, which I usually am. You guys always say that. But such a small percentage of cases have hung juries, but I would be surprised.
Porch.
You were drinking as well, were you not?
I was drinking. He was on the back porch while I was in the house and I was cooking. And it was one of those where maybe if I start making dinner now, it will be over at a particular time and we can go to bed at a reasonable time. And I even put it in the bedroom and had a movie set up for us to watch. So it would just kind of be dinner in bed. And then he came upstairs and saw that I had made the steak dinner, and I don't know how to describe how drunk he was, but it definitely was not George. And had him come lay on the bed, sit on the bed, and, put the, I got the dogs out, and I presented him with the steak dinner, and sat down and was getting ready to start playing the movie. And he starts being very rude and cursing the steak and finding fault with it. And then, I'm having to encourage him to eat. If you want me to cut it up for you, I will cut it up for you. Did you want some more sour cream for your potato? What can I do to make you happier? And then he started to pull on me and kept saying that I just want to fuck you on the steak and fuck you on the potatoes. And I took offense to that, and I kept trying to encourage him to eat. I started to eat.
He's just getting really drunk and saying nonsense.
I don't know why he was so angry that day. I don't know if it's because I got steak. I don't know. Most of the time, I don't know the reason why. I couldn't take it anymore. Obviously, I was not going to be able to eat. So I started to crawl off of the bed to leave, just the bedroom. And he told me again that I'm not going anywhere. And he stabbed me in my leg, and it crunched. You could hear a noise that it made, and blood just started to come out of my leg, just like a fountain. So I got off of the bed. He's starting to freak out, and grabbed me a towel. I got a wet towel, and I'm sitting here holding the towel, and it's increasingly becoming even more and more saturated by the minute. It's just minutes. So I'm going through towels and towels, and I said, George, I think I need to go to the hospital. This is not stopping to bleed. This is serious. And he got on his knees and begged me, please don't call the police. Please don't call the police. Please don't call the police. And inevitably, he went and got my car keys and put them around his neck again, and my cell phone. So I was not able to call anyone, and I wasn't able to leave in my car. So I figured I would just go downstairs, and I'm just going to go downstairs. And I had propped my foot up on the glass table that we had, and blood is just everywhere. Blood is everywhere. I can't keep up with the amount of blood, and I'm starting to feel very weak and really weird. And he comes downstairs, and he's still begging me, please don't call 911. Please don't call 911. I kept telling him, there's something, this is serious. This is something. Because he knew that he would probably get arrested or something bad would happen to him. So I couldn't take him anymore. He was just all over me, and I'm bleeding. I'm bleeding very badly, and he's having me try to console him. And I kept telling him, please, I need to call 911, please. And I said, okay, just give me a moment. And I crawled upstairs to my son's bathroom, which is the furthest bathroom away from everything. And I remember holding onto the sink, and I looked into the mirror, and my lips were blue. And I knew I needed help. I needed help. And he came upstairs looking frantic for me, calling my name. And then I turned to him and I said, please, I'm going to die. I've lost a lot of blood. There's something wrong. My lips are blue. Please, we don't have to call an ambulance. If you could just take me, I'll drive whatever I can do, please, to go to the hospital for this. And he said,
So I can't tell. We froze again. I don't know. We're dealing with it. We're just rolling through internet issues like we had last night too. I don't know why this is happening, but we're here. So this story is gruesome, right? And then it gets even worse when we start to see actual pictures of what happened. Kelsey told me it's glitchy, so I'm trying to reload here. Reload. See if it works. Give me a second here. This happened.
blood, there's something wrong. My lips are blue. Please.
This
Please.
happened literally almost the same exact time last night. It was like right at the hour and 4 minute mark. So I don't know what it is, but it's very annoying. Yeah, I know people are saying they lost sound and I'm gone, but I'm back. Hit the like button if you're still here. There was like 12, 13,000 people here. We'll see how many end up being here after all the glitches. The real ones stick around through the glitches. Okay. So they end up getting to show more pictures of this injury that came as a result of a knife. And to me, this was one of the ones where I was like, okay, this is bad. This is real. This is bad. And people are saying, don't rely on Wi-Fi. I've got plugin. I just call everything Wi-Fi. Yes, I use StreamYard. I know this is where all you guys are the best and trying to help me. I have everything you could possibly have. And I don't know why sometimes this still happens. But it is what it is. It's the life we live here as a streamer, right? But when they start showing these pictures, I was thinking, okay, this is worse than I thought, right? Like that's the scar from the staples from the stabbing here that she described. This is not, I almost just said, this is not just somebody who pushes somebody around, which that's the right word is to use just. But this is not like somebody who one time slapped, pushed, hit, punched their spouse, right? This is a lot more than that. This was a lot worse than that. And what I'll say is there are a bunch of people in the chat saying, I just don't believe a word she's saying. I get that. And a lot of times we say, listen, credibility is judged by the jurors, but we always look for corroborating evidence that's independent, right? And objective. Well, this to me seems like independent and objective evidence of what was going on. And from my perspective, this added a lot of credibility to the prior domestic violence. It did. And from my perspective, I feel confident saying it was bad. Like this was a very bad and toxic and abusive relationship. Now that can be true. And this still might not legally be a self-defense case. So just saying that is not enough to get her to not guilty because of self-defense. He pushed her down. She scraped her knee. There was a picture of her bloody knee, hit her in the ear. So this was also pretty scary, I personally thought. And it was interesting because it was with the same bat that's in court. But these still photos of him pointing the bat. I'm going to turn off the sound for a second. So pointing the bat at her and then beating their TV with that bat. Like literally, that's pretty scary. A guy literally pointing a bat at you while you're taking a picture of him. And then literally still photos of him smashing a TV with a bat. And again, she says he's drunk. And this is the type of stuff he does when he gets drunk and he's angry and he's violent. Oh, somebody's saying, yeah. Sherry said, I don't believe everything she's saying. Sure, of course. I definitely don't believe everything she's saying. She's admitting half the stuff she's already said is a lie. But the stuff where there's corroborating evidence with pictures, that's tough to just ignore. That's tough to just ignore. She said she absolutely did not push him down the stairs. He threatened to harm the dogs in the past. He shows the blown up pictures to the jury. Then they got into some of the past arrests that she had. And, you know, she was afraid to tell the cops the truth, I guess. And she only went to the police station because the cops said, you know, due to her pregnancy, you have to come here again, a call back to that prior. And then I did think this was important. So we're going to play 2 more clips here for direct, and then we're going to get to cross. First one's at 8:05. Which, you know, they always feel like they've got to ask this question when you have a situation here similar to Murdaugh. But let's see how she answers the question of, why did you lie to the police?
Ms. Boone, tell the jury why you lied to the police.
I lied to the police Basically everyone, because I was extremely fearful of being arrested. I made the first attempt of me calling 911 by telling them what happened, and I thought that they were going to help me, but instead I was arrested for calling 911.
I was very keen on not getting arrested, and I called 911, and instead of helping me, I got arrested. It got me arrested. That sounds like Maverick when he says to me, Dad, you got me in trouble tonight. It's like, no, I punished you. You got in trouble, right? It's like you got yourself in trouble by what you did. It's not because I punished you that you got in trouble, right? And she's like, I called 911 and that's why I got arrested. It's like, no, I don't think that's how it is.
So you made the decision to lie.
I did.
Did you stay with that lie?
I did.
Are you telling the truth today?
I am.
Now let me take you back to the.
And that's it. So you lied, you stayed with the lie, but now you're telling the truth. Again, for a person like me with my personality, that doesn't explain it away. That's not enough, in my opinion. All right. Now let's listen to kind of the end of direct and the beginning of cross for people that were saying that the prosecutor was soft or careful or didn't want to come off too harsh with her. Right in the beginning of cross, I felt like this is not a soft vibe. But first, we're going to listen to the end of the direct. And again, some things I was like, why did you say this as the defense?
Anxiety galore. Just, I can never relax.
When he's drinking.
Yes.
And the state of intoxication that he was at the time of this event, is that the state that scares you the most?
It's the tone, yes. There's a lot of...
That is leading. How he was that night, was that the state that scares you the most? That's the answer. That's the answer in the question. I would have objected to that.
alarms and red flags that go on throughout the day or night or whenever it is that we are drinking.
Tell us about that. How that heightens, does that heighten your sense of safety?
At all times.
Especially when he's drinking?
Oh yes, all the time.
And then his mood?
Yes, it depends on what mood he's in that day.
Do you have like a sixth sense of how he's doing?
Yes, I knew George very well.
Sustained. Can you tell us what you mean by that? Sixth sense, or knew him very well?
I guess you could say that I was trained by fear with him. Just, it wasn't fun anymore when we would drink and we would hang out on the back porch. It wasn't fun anymore because I knew inevitably that something was going to happen to me one way or another.
Miss Boone, you know, those bruises that we saw of him, they look pretty deep.
Why did you say that? Those bruises we saw on him, they looked pretty deep. It's like, so she beat him really bad with the bat to bruise him that deep through the suitcase. It seemed like she was like, I don't get it. Octavio, I agree, which is why it's so important that the state tell the story. Now, he may have had some really bad things in his past and done some really bad things, but still tell the story about how he did not deserve this that night. That is the state's job.
Tell the jury what you were thinking.
From the bat,
Yes.
I didn't want to die that night. I can't describe it to you. It's terrifying love to a certain degree where my plan was to show him the next day and just, I wanted him to be better and treat me nicer and be the person that he was when I originally met him. And I knew that was in him still. I knew that it could be found and I just couldn't figure out what it was that I was doing wrong in order for it to not be back to where that was. And I was tired of living in fear and just sick all the time of figuring out how I can entertain him so I don't die. And
I mean, that sounds a little bit like, and again, these are like movies, right? Where, or what's the Dixie Chicks song? Earl's Gotta Die or whatever, you know? It's one of my wife's favorite songs. Maybe I should be nervous. But it's like, that's still a crime, right? Like, it's still a crime. People may understand it. There be lesser versions of crimes. But if somebody's horrible to you and you set up a plot to end their life because you don't want to live in fear, that's still a crime under a lot of circumstances. If they're not doing something to you that day, if you're not in fear for your life, if there's not that overt act. That's kind of what the judge was talking about, why we have so much discussion about that overt act. Goodbye, Earl. That's what it's called. Goodbye, Earl. Yeah, all you guys are saying goodbye, Earl. It's like, yeah, you can't plan to do something like that to free yourself. You can leave. You can call the cops. You can go get Brian. But the end of this kind of seemed like a plan to get rid of him because he was so mean to her, which again, anybody could understand why she doesn't want to be around him anymore if what she testified to was true. There's no proof the stab wound was from him. So my only pushback on this, Deborah, I wasn't there. I don't know. But the state attorneys on this case, they have the medical records. They have her phone with the text messages. They have the pictures. They have timelines. And he didn't bring up any inconsistencies about how there's nothing in your phone that says this happened from him. There was no police report that this happened from him. So if there was actually evidence to prove that that stab wound was not from him, I think they would have brought it up. And at this point, there's evidence on the record that he did it to her because her testimony is evidence. The jury doesn't have to believe it, but it's there. Yes, Dom said she has text message about getting rid of him. Yeah, we've mentioned that a bunch. Somebody wrote Duke of Earl. Duke of Earl. I used to love that song. I still love that song. It's oldie but a goodie.
Continue a relationship with my son and try to live a normal life. That wasn't a normal life for me. And just, I bottom line is I didn't want to die. I would have died, or I would have been disfigured or maimed, or if it weren't me with the bat, it would have been him if he were to have gone out.
So that's the end of direct. And we jump right into cross. And is he going to ease his way into it? Is he going to handle her with kid gloves? Let's listen.
George, know somebody named Crystal? Did you ever mention Crystal in your text messages about being one of his bitches?
Don't know. I don't remember.
How about Christine? Did George know Christine?
I don't know.
How about Pamela Erickson?
These may have been people that he was communicating with on whatever the platform was.
On your phone?
I believe so, yes.
And did you find these communications?
I believe I found one or two of them from some of them.
And did you send a long letter to his family to relate to him about George and his girls that he was cheating on you with?
I believe so.
Okay, so you do know those names, right?
I don't remember them. It's been however long.
Okay. Now, on February 24th, 2020.
He comes out firing with names. Christine and Erica, and you know these girls, don't you? You wrote a letter saying he was cheating. So I thought she said on direct that he wasn't cheating, but maybe he was. But he comes out, I think, wanting to get under her skin, wanting to pick at her, wanting to throw some haymakers. That's the vibe I got coming out hot on cross. I don't think it hit that well, but I was like, okay, all right, he's going to come out swinging.
You called 911 at about 1 p.m., correct?
Yes.
And at that point, you were still feeling a little intoxicated, were you not?
It was more shocking, yes.
And that's, she's like, tries to clarify whatever. He gets into so much about the big bottles. She was drunk. Alcohol could have affected you that night. Then he starts going through the facts about what she did that night. She immediately zipped it shut, basically, is what she said in her own words, which I didn't think was great. There's some more kind of snippiness between the prosecutor and Sarah Boone. We'll listen to a little bit of that.
That earlier today?
I did.
Okay. My specific question between these two movies is, this is when he begins to get angry and trying to push his way out and to get out of the suitcase, correct?
Angry again, yes.
And he was expressing his anger in what manner? How did he say this?
At this point throughout the day.
Ma'am, you know very well that I'm talking about between these movies. Please answer my question. Between these two movies, how did he express his anger with you?
Told me that I was going to fucking die.
Okay. Now this is happening after he's already told you several times he cannot breathe in the suitcase, correct?
Correct.
And he's been in there for whatever brief amount of time it took you to zip him up, and the laughter stops, and you go over and begin to film, correct? And you're filming Your purpose of filming is to kind of teach him a lesson. This is your chance to say something to him when he can't say anything back to you, correct?
No,
Then correct me.
there was no lesson to be learned. It was just I wanted him to try to understand how I felt so maybe he could progress in being a better person the next day.
So first off, the state gets snippy. You know very well what I'm talking about, but then he uses the words movies when he means videos, which I didn't love that. Because that is a little bit confusing. Like they're videos, not movies. I get why he said movies. Is probably like a .mov file or something. But again, that was a little clunky, but he got her there, right? You want to teach him a lesson. She's like, no. I just wanted him to understand how I felt afterwards. It's like, yeah, I think you want to teach him a lesson. So I thought there were some good nuggets the state got. I just don't think they were pounded enough as they could have been.
So you wanted him to understand how you felt in the past, and that's not teaching a lesson?
I just wanted him to understand.
Okay. All right. So immediately prior to zipping him up and putting him into the movie, you had been upstairs, correct?
Okay, so they keep going through the timeline of what happened. He does talk about how you don't remember taking the picture or the video, but you do remember other things that night. That would have been a perfect opportunity for him to be like, again, go down the line one by one. You remember this, right? You remember this, right? You don't remember that. You don't remember that. Isn't that interesting? Objection, no commentary from the lawyer. And the same thing I would have done it back to back. So let's talk about what you remember. Let's talk about what you don't remember. Let's talk about what you said at the police station, and let's talk about what you're saying on the stand now. I would have just taken my time slowly, politely, maybe even gassed her up a little bit. I know you're really smart. I know you're really educated. I know you know how to solve everything. Let's just walk through this with me. I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I just want to try to get this stuff straight. So you drank a lot that night. It was a traumatic night. So there's obviously things you don't remember. So tell me what you don't remember. And I would sandwich the fact that she doesn't remember all this other stuff around these 9 minutes, but she remembers exactly what happened these 9 minutes. And she told a bunch of truths in the interrogation. And that would have been interesting. It's like, you were drinking, right? That was true. You were doing puzzles. You were doing art. Everything was fine that day. All that stuff is true, right? George put himself in the suitcase. True. You zipped him up, right? True. You left him there and went to bed, right? True. You got up in the morning and found him, right? True. So all that stuff is true. So the only thing you're saying that was not true at the time was you said unintentional, and now you're saying intentional. And that's what I would have gotten into. So tell me what you intentionally did that night. Everything you intentionally did. Now tell me what was unintentional that you did that night, right? Make her explain it. That's what I would have done. I would have really taken my time. I don't know if it feels like they really just want to get this case done by the end of this week. And I thought we were going to get back behind schedule because I thought she was going to be on the stand for 2 days. But when she was done by the end of the day, I'm like, yeah, we're still flying through this. And they're trying to move witnesses up. I really think that there was just so much more. And I think you could do it very politely. And you know what? Some of what you guys said, I love it. I love the critiques that you guys give me. I probably wouldn't have even gone into the prior acts of domestic violence. You guys are right. As a man, with a woman on the stand who said a man abused her, maybe there was just no good way to deal with the prior acts of violence. Fine. But the inconsistencies, that's fair game. The lies, that's fair game. The memory issues at, inopportune times, or opportune times, I should say, that's fair game. There were some parts where he would ask her about all these little details. And I was like, oh, I think he's trying to get at she doesn't have a good memory of the details, so maybe she's making stuff up. I don't know. I couldn't really get behind. There was definitely some nuggets, and I think he's going to use those nuggets in closing argument. But gosh, there was just so much. It's kind of like Murdaugh. It's like there's just so much to cross-examine this guy on. And I felt the same way about Sarah Boone. You didn't tell 911 that you zipped him up in a suitcase. Good point. When you describe being with George, you describe it like it's taking care of a child. I think that's a great point. You say all these other people are notorious for this and notorious for that. What are you notorious for? And then he points out the fact that she said sometimes she doesn't pick up her ex-husband's call because she wants him to know she has stuff to do. Again, a little window. And I probably would have done a little bit of that too. Nicely with honey, right? You catch more flies with honey. You wanted him to make sure that you have a life, right? And you have things to do, and you want to make sure. So when he's calling you and telling you to make sure you're not late for Lucas, sometimes you don't even pick up, right? And that day you were just sitting in bed doing nothing, but it didn't matter. You still didn't answer the call because you got to know, you got to make sure he knows you have a life, right? Let the jury feel the narcissism a little bit. That's something you got to do as a lawyer too, if you have it and you think it played into the crime. All right, we're going to listen to good night. It's already an hour and 25 minutes in. All right, we're going to listen to the last 10 or 15 minutes of Cross here because this was, I thought, where most of the important stuff came out that I wanted to react to. So here we go.
That you did not push him down the stairs, correct?
Yes.
And in fact, it was him that dragged you down the stairs the night before, correct?
Yes.
Now, by dragged, did you leave your feet?
Yes.
And did you get scrapes on your knees or anywhere from the carpet?
I'm not sure.
Did you get any injuries, like bruises or abrasions or scrapes?
I was missing a lot of my hair. Yes, that was on the stairwell.
Okay. And you agree that you were photographed on February 24th when the police came out, correct?
The day of the incident?
Well, the afternoon after the incident. We're not sure when he passed.
Yes.
The we're not sure when he passed comment is like a bit of a passive aggressive comment. I'm like, I don't did you score a point with that? I don't think you scored a point with that. Those are the type of things where I don't think he was trying to handle her with care. I did not get that vibe. Maybe you guys did.
Some of those photographs showed ashtrays inside your house. I thought you said you guys couldn't smoke inside your house.
We couldn't.
But you did. Right?
Sometimes, yes.
That's an inconsistency he hit her on. There were ashtrays inside his house, so sometimes you did smoke inside the house. Why not go through the interrogation video, right? I don't understand it. I feel like he probably is never going to want to talk to me. I don't want to come down harshly on him. He's probably a very good lawyer. And again, he's doing it. He knows the case way better than I do. I would love to ask, why not do more of that? What was the thought? What was the strategy? I truly believe this guy is thoughtful and smart. And I think he absolutely did this strategically. And I would just like to learn, as a lawyer who does this, what was the strategy behind it? Because I would have done it differently. And maybe I'm dead wrong. And maybe the way he did it is right. And I think he very well could still win this case. And I would say he's in the lead by a long shot in this case. So again, at the end of the day, maybe he's thinking, I don't want to bore the jury. I don't want to go over. Oh, here's the other thing that I wanted to say. A lot of times trial lawyers can watch the jury, see the reactions, get the vibes. Maybe he knows this jury is just so with him right now that if he would have hammered her, they might have hated him. And he didn't want to even take that chance. And he can tell that the jury knows that she's lying at this point. This Wi-Fi is bothering me. I'm sure it's bothering all of you too. I realize it glitched again. I can see the scrolly things, so I apologize again. All right, let's keep listening.
And you agree you would go to the hospital and tell them things that were not true, correct?
Yes.
There were times where you would go to the hospital and leave without getting treatment, correct?
Yes.
Is it fair to say that you often had alcohol in your system when you were going to the hospital, correct?
Sometimes.
All right, so just to summarize the day to make sure we understand it. You all wake up sometime in the morning, but it's an unknown time, correct? On February 23rd.
Or early afternoon. I had a problem with the detectives and them having me guesstimate times.
Okay. Are you the kind of person like most of us that uses your phone when you wake up?
No.
So the first activity on your phone may have nothing to do with when you woke up. Is that fair for you?
Yes, other than looking at the time.
Okay. So at some point you wake up, it doesn't sound like you have breakfast, correct?
Right.
You do some chores, correct?
Yes.
So that is true. That part of it is true. You did do chores before going to Publix at 12:17?
Yes.
All right. After chores, you go.
I thought he was going to do that with everything. I was like, oh, here we go. He's going to do, that's true. That part's true. I thought he was going to do that with everything.
Go to Publix and you get that 1.5 liter Magnum bottle of Woodbridge Chardonnay, correct?
I'm not sure what Magnum is.
1.5 liters. Instead of the 750s, it's the double size. It's like 2 bottles of wine.
Okay, yes.
So you got a 1.5 liter, right?
Yes, it was the large bottle.
And you got home, and you at 100 pounds and Mr. Torres at 103 pounds began drinking this wine, correct?
I'm guessing so. I'm not going to guess times.
Well, don't guess. I mean, you got home from Publix. When was your first drink?
I'm not sure. I mean, we could have continued to do whatever was left over from what we didn't do before we went to Publix.
Okay. So you may have started drinking even later, correct?
Then
12:30, when you get back from Publix?
I don't know.
Okay. Was it 1:30 or 2:30 when you began drinking?
I don't know.
All right. Was it before any of the phone calls to the brothers and his daughters?
Yes.
And so you drink what's left in the bottle of wine from the day before that's halfway labeled, correct?
At some point.
And then you drink 1.5 liters of wine, and he goes out and gets another one on his own without your permission or suggestion about 5:30, correct?
Correct.
And then you all consume that one as well, and it ends up in the trash can at the end of the night, correct?
Apparently.
Okay. At what point in the night does your memory tape stop? Because you described that it wasn't on at 11:03 p.m. when that photograph was taken. What's the last thing you actually do remember prior to these videos being made?
Another great question. Again, I thought this was the beginning of really going into the memory loss just at opportune times for her.
I don't recall it at this point. I don't remember.
All right, and so it ends in hide and seek after Art's from Puzzle, correct?
Yeah.
He says, tag, you're it, but you run and go upstairs and hide, right?
Yes.
So does that mean he's it and he's supposed to come find you?
No. That's just,
So you both hide?
no.
Okay. How does this work?
I don't know how to tell you.
Okay.
I was it, and I went ahead.
I mean, my understanding of the rules of hide and seek is one person will be it, cover his or her eyes, and count to like 20, and then go find the person that's hiding. Is that your familiarity with the rules too, or do you guys have house rules? Cool.
I understand how the
Okay. So,
That feels sarcastic to me. That feels like if you don't want the jury to think you're being sarcastic with her, you wouldn't ask questions like that. That was my vibe. I don't know. You guys tell me how you saw it.
explain to me, what was your expectation? You go up to the shower. Were you expecting him to come find you?
I was.
Okay. And after a while, he did not come find you.
Yes.
And that's when you return downstairs.
Correct.
And because of the way your townhouse is set up, you can kind of see over where the suitcase is and that he's trying to hide in there, but it's not successfully hidden just yet.
I mean, yes, you have to come down a good ways in order to be able
Right. But you testified those before you got to the bottom.
Yes.
All right. And then you come over there and thinking that it's funny, you zip him shut, correct?
Yes, we both have signed.
Okay. And the defendant, stand down.
Entered the well.
Yes.
So here we go now with something very unusual. He's going to bring her down and they're going to look at this suitcase together and they're going to try to zip it and unzip it. I'm not sure exactly what he was trying to prove. And I have some thoughts on this, but I want to know your guys' thought. What did you think was proven by the demonstration with the suitcase? Let me know in the chat.
Yes.
So clearly very difficult for him to get the zipper unzipped. Okay. And I want to talk more about when she tries to work the zipper, what my thoughts were, because it kind of went both ways. Some people are saying they thought it was pointless. I guess that's true.
All right. Ms. Boone, can you demonstrate for the jury where Mr. Torres' head was and how his body was positioned in the suitcase, if you don't mind?
His back was this way and his head was here.
All right, and then is it fair to say his feet are kind of down here, which would be the front left corner from your perspective in the jury box?
Yes.
And then his knees are kind of tucked up towards his face.
If I remember correctly, yes, that's the position.
Okay. All right. Can you help me understand how it was that you zipped it shut? Can you show us where you say you left an opening that his hand got out of?
Would it be easier to put it from here?
I didn't want to make you go down there. If you're happy doing that, I'll let you.
Hold up. Does she need to be wearing gloves?
Yes. Agreed. She's gonna.
She needs to be wearing gloves. They get gloves. A lot of people had a problem that Owens came and put the gloves on for her. Why is he in the well? People were asking. I think that was one of the questions here. Why is he in the well with her? It's not unusual for a lawyer to help the defendant. Frankly, to have a criminal defendant who everybody argued was so dangerous that she needs to keep the handcuffs on, that she needs to have the shock bracelet on and all this stuff, to ask her to come down into the well, to me, proves nobody's afraid of Sarah Boone there. Nobody's afraid of Sarah Boone in this courtroom. Nobody's afraid Sarah Boone's going to try to do anything to anybody, especially not this prosecutor asked her to come out from the well. So I just thought that was a side point. But it's not unusual for Owens to come in. He could reposition himself so he could see better. He could have objected. The state could have objected and made the judge make a call. And that's, is what it is at this point. So people were saying it was a huge fail. So she's about to try to, zip it and unzip it. And I had some thoughts about this that I want to share with you guys.
Okay, well, where's the paperwork? I need to remember what. This is what it's in.
She asks where the paperclip is, and she's, she thinks she's very smart at this point. But again, she is smart. She's not a dumb person. Stop applying our standards to Sarah Boone. She's different. Whoops. So the problem, Sri, is this is an objective person standard. Reasonable person. The experts are going to explain how Sarah Boone's background affects this case, legally speaking, but the jurors do apply a reasonable person standard in this circumstance. So I'm not going outlandish. I don't know what you mean by applying my standard. Most of the standards I apply are legal standards, but it's going to be something the jury is going to look at, and they're going to have to make determinations based on this. So I do think she is very smart. I think she's way above average competence level, which again comes into the Miranda stuff, right? When we talk about people of lower intelligence, it kind of can change the way that everything is looked at. But she asks where the paperclip is. So they get the paperclip out, they put it on the suitcase, and Owens is looking at it because, to be fair, when they ask your client to come down and demonstrate something, that can be very dangerous. So you want to make sure everything is in order. There's no tricks. The OJ glove thing, right? You got to be careful. It can go wrong for you real quick. It can make you look really bad. I was thinking, oh gosh, is she going to be able to unzip this really easily or not really easily? And whichever it is, what am I going to think? And so let's watch it, and I'll tell you what my initial reaction was.
Okay.
So they go to a sidebar.
If you want me to do it, I'm fine to take your direction.
From what I remember, this is how the suitcase was.
So this is her trying to zip it.
This was not this hard either.
She says this was not this hard either.
So this was like here.
Okay.
Right here.
Okay, there now?
Sure.
Good. I assume this one was much closer? It's not over there? Where do you?
You asked me where I zipped it.
When?
Also, never a position I want to find myself in trial is like kneeling on the floor of the courtroom. So I don't think it probably hit exactly how he wanted to, but he was trying to show where the opening was that George could have stuck his hand through.
When you say that was zip shut, show us.
Are you talking about how I zipped it, or?
When you're done zipping it shut and he's inside of it, where are the zipper compartments?
Just tell me what's that up.
I mean, it was the corner. I mean, it's not. Yes, this one was on the image. Yes. From what I can remember.
I mean, Owens definitely stepped in there. That was potentially unnecessary, but no objection. So we're a little unorthodox at this point, and this is what's happening. So they're trying to show that's how much room she left for him to get his hand out. Now, what I would have done is, in the police interrogation, you said there was enough room to stick his little fingers out of it. That seems like a lot more room than to stick his little fingers out of it. Get with the inconsistencies if you're going to make her do this demonstration is kind of what I thought. But when I saw how difficult it was that Sarah Boone couldn't even zip this zipper, okay? I was like, oh boy, they're making her look bad like she can't zip it. And then I was like, well, wait a second. If it took her this long to zip up this zipper with a paper clip and a broken zipper, and it's really as jammed up as this, if it took her this long and it was this difficult for her to zip up this suitcase, George could have easily gotten out of it before she zipped it. George could have easily stopped her from zipping up this suitcase all the way. So even more evidence potentially that he was in on this game of hide and seek and was allowing her to zip him in the suitcase. It's not like she forced him in there. That's where my mind kind of went at the end of it, where it's like, I don't really think this demonstration proved anything good for the state. I don't know. I don't know. I really wanted to hear your guys' thoughts because you guys are prospective jurors and you might sit on a jury and something like this could happen. Yes, she absolutely said it wasn't this hard before. Absolutely. George was incapacitated. I mean, they both seemed to equally be incapacitated. I mean, I don't think they were incapacitated. I think they were, at this point, drunk, intoxicated, but not necessarily incapacitated. So I don't know. That I found interesting. So let's keep listening here as we get to the end of cross.
That's how he was cutting with his hand out. It was like this from the corner part.
Okay. Thank you. You can return your seat. Did you ever change the position?
Okay, so people think George was out cold and that she hit him with the bat before he got in there. Okay. So there was no hide and seek. All right. I get what you're saying. It proves George was incapacitated. Okay. That's a theory I had not heard a bunch of. Okay. I got you. Or she sat on top of the suitcase to zip it. Okay.
Of those zippers once you put it in that position.
I did not.
And so once he was zipped into there, there's some amount of time, but you don't remember specifically before you start taking the 2-minute video, correct?
Yes.
And then that's when you say what you say, and that's when he says what he says. We've all heard it, correct? And then between there, in that second video of the 22 seconds length, it's at this point where he's beginning to get angry. And then that's when you take the baseball bat that's in evidence, and your testimony is start poking with the end of it.
Did you say this was the second video?
Between the two videos, that's when you started hitting with the bat because he was getting angry and trying to escape, correct?
Right. I was not hitting him. Yes.
Okay. Did you ever hit him with the bat while he was outside of the suitcase?
No.
So each time that he is hit with the bat, it's through this suitcase. And that's what leaves the marks on him. You didn't hit him with the bat outside the suitcase, correct?
Yes, he let me demonstrate.
No, that's okay. The suitcase will speak for itself. And then you take the second video and you go
Then now she's getting used to it and she's like, I could demonstrate. He's like, no, that's okay.
upstairs and go to bed, correct?
I apparently went upstairs and I used the phone to make a phone call.
Okay.
And then I fell asleep.
All right. And at the point in time when you left and went upstairs, he was still inside the suitcase, correct?
Correct.
Was he still asking for you and calling your name?
Not that I can recall.
Did you say shh to him again?
I don't remember.
Did you tell him that this was his problem and it's on you again?
I don't remember.
Did you do anything to help him escape from the predicament that you zipped him up in?
No.
No other questions.
All right. So some good things, right? Some good points there. So there's a couple parts of cross-examination that lawyers absolutely prepare. There's a lot you're going to react to while she's testifying. He's probably taking notes, adding to his cross. But the beginning and the end, you really want to have prepared. So, all the girls' names at the beginning, he prepared that. Didn't think it was that great. The end, those couple questions I thought was great. Did you do anything to help him out of the predicament that you zipped him up in? And she said no. Great end to cross, Mr. J, I thought. Very great end. I also kind of think the whole suitcase thing, he saved that till the end because he thought that was going to hit well. I don't think it hit that well, personally. The suitcase demonstration. Yeah, I think she wanted to demonstrate hitting the suitcase, which is kind of crazy. So he finished his cross. That's it. Cross is over. And Owens wanted to get on the record that they're not going to pursue certain medical records of George, and he explained it to Sarah, and he wants her to say on the record she's good with it. Again, that's a lawyer maybe a little afraid the client's going to complain about some things that he did or said. But that's it. That was the end of cross. I mean, I don't think it was like a horrible cross, right? I don't think he asked a bunch of stupid questions or missed the mark or missed the boat. I just thought he could have done more with what he was given. That's kind of all I thought. I don't think it was horrible. I don't think it was so bad. I don't think it was an F. Like, it was a C, right? He asked some good questions. He got some good points. I think he left some stuff out there, right? The direct, I would say, was a C. Like, I didn't think it was great. I didn't think it was horrible. I thought it was fine. I think, like, you can't really explain away a lot of things that they tried to explain away. Maybe I'd bump it to a C+ because I did absolutely think the prior domestic violence, the way it was presented, it did hit. And there were multiple people that left comments, some of which were still yet to read, that they changed their mind because of that prior domestic violence. And that is the defense's goal. That is the defense's goal when presenting that. So maybe I would bump it up even more because I do think their presentation of that did show Sarah Boone as the victim. All right, Let me get through some of these. We got a lot of super chats to get to. I was surprised regarding the photo evidence of DV. However, I don't believe she was in fear for her life. I don't think it's M now. I hate that I changed my mind. There's a couple of these. By the way, I'm going to answer a bunch of questions, so you can keep getting your questions in. Make sure you hit the like button. We've got 14,000 people here across, Twitter and YouTube and all the different things. Everybody, wherever you're watching, hit that like button. Let's get this one to 15,000 likes over the time period. I know there's not 15,000 people in here right now. And don't forget to subscribe. Yes. Denny Dawn said, Peter, how do we know it's George that did it to her? No dates and times. So I think we're going to have some officers come testify to some of those police reports and that she made the allegations those days. We'll wait and see. So I didn't even show the most gruesome one, which was her completely black eye when she described the time that George stomped her face. When I saw that one, I was like, whoa. Like, it's really bad. Really bad. She had tons of stories, more stories than any woman should have about things happening to them. And I understand if you don't believe her, but the pictures, and again, we're still going to see police reports and other corroborating evidence. I'm going to answer these questions, and then I'm going to get to what I hope to see on rebuttal. If afraid, why not call for help when he was in the suitcase? Yeah, I said that from day one. I agree with you, BC. Why not run from the house? If afraid for life, going to sleep would be the last thing I do. This is two alcoholics fighting, not one. John, just to be certain, the jurors won't ever see any of her past history choosing a lawyer. Crazy what the public knows versus the jurors. Yes, John. It's a wild world we live in. Arden, I was firmly in the camp of guilty and throw away the key. The domestic violence moved me from that. No tolerance for a man who beats a woman, let alone stabs one. Now I would have trouble with second degree. There were a lot of these comments coming through. Caitlin, I feel the state went soft to not lose the jury, being hard to Sarah Boone during talk of abuse, but the rebuttal and upcoming character evidence will be damning. Pesky pirouette. If Sarah goes to prison, can George's family attach her alimony? Brian doesn't want to pay. So if legally he doesn't have to pay it, there's not going to be anything to attach. This is probably not something that would happen through the legal channels. Chris K, I thought it was interesting how much she resisted being framed as a person with an alcohol problem. She resisted every question. Yes, she resisted anything negative, even like the weight gain. She had to give a reason for it, right? And I think that gives a little window into, how she thinks and her personality. She has gloves on and a paperclip, not like the original, not worth the showing. Jules, great point. Great point. And those are the different circumstances. Lynn, thanks. Just thanks. Thank you, Lynn. Mind the shadows. I think I have more empathy for Sarah Boone after today, but she saw an opportunity for revenge and took it. I still can't see it as she was defending herself. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of like, again, from the jump, I have felt like manslaughter, voluntary or involuntary, it just always seemed like that type of case to me. It always seemed like it fit better into that box just for me. LB said, Peter, I think it was effective for the prosecutor to show that Sarah didn't feel anything while demonstrating this. That's a great point, LB. And that's not something I would ever think of on my own. So I appreciate it. And that's what's cool about having diverse jurors with different points of view is one juror might not care. One juror might point that out in the room when they discuss it, when they start deliberating. So that to me is a good point. She can't seem to manage to zip it. If it doesn't zip, you must have quit. Amy. Other people were, I saw Joe Mendoza with his O.J. Simpson quote. Sherry, they were playing hide and seek and George died in the suitcase. They were playing swords and she got stabbed. Both sound similar, except George is dead. She survived. They're both a mess. There's way too many stories, right? There's just way too many stories. I get that court can force someone on the stand to answer questions, but can they force them to perform physical things like this or Jodi Arias assuming that linebacker position? So yes and no. If it's reasonable, they can ask. If the client refuses, they can discuss that. If the defense lawyer objects for any reason, if it's not relevant, if it's not fair, if it's just to inflame the passions of the jury. So there are some objections you can have to it, but generally speaking, it is allowed. Now, if she would have said, I can't walk down there, I don't remember, I can't do it, whatever, given some legitimate reason, then potentially it could have been blocked. Maybe it's harder to zip now because he spent all night trying to get out and broke it more. That's potential. Twixie, objection, even if he was in on it at the beginning, when he begged to be let out, it's time to let him out. And she even admits he was uncomfortable. He wanted to get out. I knew that. She said they were both laughing about it. The crime is her beating on him and not letting him out. Yeah, I mean, some truly, truly horrible facts in addition to just being zipped in a suitcase, right? Like, I didn't realize, and we've been covering this case extensively, I did not realize the beating on him with a bat while he was in the suitcase portion of this case. I did not realize that to that effect until we got to trial and it started to come out. This, in my opinion, was a powerful ending for today. She's his height and weight, so you can visualize him in there and zero emotion handling his coffin. Yeah, you guys are spot on. Shows George was playful and not angry all day like she claims. That's a good point. Lisa, regarding the suitcase, I would have asked, how was this stored? The zipper isn't working like before. Those are questions I've seen lawyers ask in similar situations. Show me if 3 sober adults have that much trouble. Imagine George from the inside. That is sad, but also kind of ironic to think about. It's like, yeah, you have 3 people of sound mind and body right there, and they can barely get it back into that position. How was she able to do it when she was intoxicated? And what was he supposed to do intoxicated and zipped up inside? I think there may have been hide and seek, and so he was okay with being zipped in, but she had a hard time zipping it up. So why was she scared he'd get out? That's a good point. What did the prosecution want to show here? I can't tell. After it ends, he moves on so fast. We can all take what we got from it, but it's unclear. I also think it probably didn't go as well as he was hoping. So he didn't want to, sit there and, just belabor the point. He was faded in the suitcase. He got in willingly. She piled him with alcohol and promised sex after the game and then ended his life. We only have Sarah's word. They were playing hide and seek. I agree. You're right. You're right. Does lying under oath matter? She clearly lied. Yes, it does. We've talked about this before, how perjury is not taken nearly as seriously as I believe it should. What are your thoughts on the O.J. Simpson case? Octavius, it's a long answer, unfortunately. So I don't want to promise you guys anything, because when I promise something, I want to do it, like go to this trial. I have to go to this trial. It's got to last till Monday. But my dad has discussed the possibility of us doing a podcast, me and him, where he goes back and does a look at O.J. Simpson, and I ask a bunch of questions about it, and we kind of discuss it together. It's possible. Can the prosecution call Sarah in their rebuttal case? I don't believe so. I think there are certain circumstances where it's possible, but I think generally the answer is no to that. Lori, as a DV victim, I'm sorry. Unless you are being attacked in the moment, no justification stopping for leaving him in the suitcase to die. Ken O, the demo with Sarah next to the suitcase put the horror of being stuck in the suitcase. Could he even manipulate his arm enough to unzip it at all? Again, I think the spatial discussion is something the jury is going to have to decide. How can they change the paperclip? I think they took the paperclip off of the zipper, probably not to lose it. Nikki, the pictures of the DV would make it harder to say guilty. However, I know there is more to come, so I will wait to make up my mind. I agree with you. And let's take a second here. Let's take a second here and talk about rebuttal. I hope the state puts on all the evidence they have of the domestic violence going the other way, and all of the abusive information they have for Sarah Boone being the aggressor, assuming it exists, right? If it doesn't exist, they're not going to present it, including Brian Boone testifying again, including officers to rebut some of what the officers that are going to testify in the defense's case. They're experts explaining that while there was abuse in the past, it does not mean there was abuse in the moment. And I hope they put it all out there and explain in detail what this relationship was like over the years. They also, I think, got a little bit of a taste of, it was your apartment. You took him off the lease. You'd kick him out. You'd hang money over his head. They got into that a little bit on cross too, which how she was kind of abusive to him with circumstances of life. And she admitted over and over again that she has, an alcohol problem, even on direct. So I hope the state methodically goes through it and puts up all the evidence and does not rush through rebuttal, because I think there is still a lot more to come. I think this case is far from over. Until watching with other esteemed law tubers live stream, I didn't adequately appreciate the quality of lawyer the snark towards the defense attorney shocked me. #Grace. The snark toward the defense attorneys. Are you talking about my snark toward the defense attorneys? Sree's just coming at me today. I don't know what snark I had toward the defense attorneys in this in this stream. But I try to tell it like it is, right? I try to be as absolutely nice as possible and give as much grace. But I also think I have to say like what I would do differently or what I think worked or what I think didn't work. But what also is great about this channel and about you guys is you tell me what works and doesn't work as potential jurors, right? I'm giving you from the lawyer's legal point of view of the arguments made and how we do this. But that's fair. That's fair. The public's knowledge versus Sarah Boone is completely a different case from the juror's knowledge versus Sarah Boone. It's weird in my opinion. Is that morally right? I don't know. John, dude, welcome to the club. I have these discussions and thoughts in my head. I get I feel like we lie to jurors sometimes. Like in civil cases, they're not allowed to know that this person has insurance. And the other side literally makes it seem like they don't. Like Miss Brown is going to have to write the check from her pocket, not Progressive. It's like, that seems like a lie. There are certain things you just can't talk about in trial because of the rules of evidence. And I understand it a lot of times. Maybe it's irrelevant. Maybe it's something that is not reliable. And there are certain reasons to keep stuff out. But sometimes I really feel that grip inside me as well, John. Exactly what you're saying. Like, and I get frustrated and I'll argue it to the judge. Even people are saying, no, that other people are snarky. Okay, sorry. I thought she was talking about me. I'll argue with judges sometimes, even though I know I'm wrong and going to lose because I know what the case law says. But I'm just like, interest of justice, judge. This feels wrong. It feels wrong. She would keep going in circles. I feel the state stopped appropriately. She lied enough. Phone versus question she had, the circles would have annoyed the jurors. And maybe you're right. And maybe you're right. Thank you, Minty, for gifting 10 Lawyer You Know memberships. That's awesome. Will the jurors be able to get into the suitcase for comparison and testing purposes? Oof. I mean, I literally shivers down the spine there. I guess they're allowed to look at the evidence. I don't think they're allowed to, touch it and manipulate it necessarily. But they're allowed to look at it. Get inside. I guess theoretically. Did you expect the graphic photos of her injuries? No, I did not expect them to be that graphic. I did not expect the injuries to be that bad, if I'm being honest. Jojo, thank you for gifting 5 memberships. Okay, 2-hour stream. That's a long one, folks. Hit the like button. If you're still sticking around here for 2 hours, hit the like button. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you, Minty. And I'm glad to do recaps. I know some people have watched it, some people haven't. But this case is one we've been following for so long, and she took the stand today, and something that we, have been waiting for. And it was interesting. It was so much quicker than I expected. So much quicker than I expected. This whole trial really is. But that's all I got. So make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit the reminder bell. Don't miss any of our other recaps. And what I'm hoping for at this point is closing arguments on Monday that I can be there and watch. We'll see. If not, I'll make it up to you guys. I promise. You guys are the best. Till next time, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast with new seasons dropping every quarter. If you have a page you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, the Lawyer You Know.